Look at those photos. Every single one looks like a crab, but none of them are true crabs. And that should not be possible because these animals are not closely related. Some evolved millions of years apart, and some lived in completely different oceans. Yet they all ended up with the same body shape. And that is not a coincidence. Something in nature drives animals toward this exact design, over and over again. But why would evolution repeat itself like this? In this video, you will see why many researchers believe this outcome might be inevitable. Once you'll understand what is happening here, you'll start questioning the way you think evolution works. The illustration of crabs. First, not everything that looks like a crab is a crab. In fact, most are not. And that is where the illusion begins. Because when we see the same shape repeated over and over again, we assume they must share the same origin. But that assumption is wrong. The phenomenon even has a name. It is called carcinization, which literally means becoming crab-like. And at first, that sounds simple, almost harmless, but the implications are far stranger than most people realize. So how does this even happen? The answer begins with something called convergent evolution. This is when unrelated species evolve similar traits, not because they share ancestors, but because they face similar environmental pressures. And almost nobody expects evolution to repeat itself so precisely. But here is where the common belief starts to fall apart: the efficiency trap. Most people think evolution is endlessly creative, that it constantly invents new designs, new body plans, new solutions. And yet, when researchers map crustacean families across millions of years, a strange pattern appears. Species that split long ago from different oceans with no close connection, still drifting toward the same outline. On the seafloor, certain proportions keep reappearing. Wider fronts, shorter bodies, tucked segments. It shows up slowly, then suddenly, like a blueprint being rediscovered. And this is where the crab shape enters the picture. A crab-like body is wide and flat. That keeps the center of gravity low. It prevents flipping in strong waves. It allows the animal to wedge under rocks. It reduces exposed surface area. It turns the shell into full body armor. But this is where things get interesting. The crab body is not just effective, it is mechanically achievable. Shortening a body is easier than lengthening one. Tucking a tail under is simpler than rebuilding a new structure. Compressing segments requires fewer drastic changes than expanding them, and that makes carcinization accessible. But this doesn't explain the full pattern. The constraint pattern. Lobsters have long segmented bodies. Shrimp have extended tails built for propulsion. Flattening those structures is complicated. It disrupts movement. It disrupts muscle arrangement. It disrupts balance. But certain crustaceans already have flexible anatomy. And once they begin compressing, the transformation accelerates. But this raises a more uncomfortable question. If the crab shape is so effective, why does it mostly happen in crustaceans? Why not fish adapting into crab-like armor? Why not mammals flattening toward the same structure? Why not us? Well, make sure to stay with me, because this is where the pattern becomes clearer. Carcinization has happened multiple times independently. King crabs are not true crabs. They evolved from hermit crab ancestors that once lived inside borrowed shells. Over time, they hardened their bodies. They widened, flattened, and they stopped needing shells entirely. While porcelain crabs are not true crabs either, they belong to a completely different branch related to squat lobsters. Yet they evolved into nearly identical forms, different ancestry, different timeline, but same outcome. And that consistency is not random. King crabs are not true crabs. Porcelain crabs are not true crabs. They come from different branches, yet they end up looking nearly identical. Different ancestry, different timeline, same destination. Researchers have traced carcinization happening independently multiple times. Sometimes you can even spot in-between forms, bodies partway through the shift, which means this isn't just resemblance, it's repetition. But here is the final twist. Early crab-like species went extinct. Some lacked hardened armor. Some failed during mass extinction events. Some were outcompeted by better adapted crabs. Yet even after those failures, evolution rebuilt the crab form again and again. It is almost as if nature keeps rediscovering the same answer. Not because it wants to, but because constraints push it there. And once you realize that, another question becomes unavoidable. Because if evolution keeps repeating what works, what does that say about its limits? And more importantly, are crabs the destination or just one of the few options available? However, there is one crucial piece of this puzzle we have not addressed yet, and once you see it, the entire pattern makes sense. The real reason. So why do animals keep evolving into crabs? Because evolution is not endlessly creative. It is constrained. It operates within physical and biological limits. And when different species face the same environmental pressures, they often converge on the same structural solutions. The crab body is one of those solutions. It is not destiny. It is physics. Ocean floors reward stability. A low center of gravity prevents flipping. A flattened body resists currents. A hardened shell reduces fatal injuries. Sideways movement allows escape without exposing the vulnerable underside. Every feature solves a real survival problem. And that is why the shape keeps reappearing. Carcinization happens because certain crustaceans already possess adaptable blueprints. Their segmented exoskeleton can compress. Their abdomen can tuck beneath the thorax. Their limbs can shift orientation without catastrophic failure. The transformation requires modification, not reinvention. That is a crucial distinction. Evolution does not rebuild organisms from scratch. It modifies what already exists. If a species begins with the right components, small changes accumulate. Over millions of years, those small changes produce a crab-like form. Other animals do not have that advantage. Fish rely on streamlined bodies for propulsion. Mammals depend on internal skeletons and vertical support. Flattening into a crab shape would compromise respiration, movement, and reproduction. The cost would outweigh the benefit. So, evolution funnels crustaceans toward this configuration because it is one of the few mechanically stable endpoints available to them. That resolves the mystery from the beginning. Animals are not trying to become crabs. Evolution is not aiming for a final form. It is repeatedly landing on the same efficient answer, when the starting materials and environmental pressures align. And once you see that, the pattern becomes obvious everywhere. The limits of evolution. Dolphins and sharks share streamlined bodies for speed. Birds and bat independently evolved wings for flight. Even extinct pterosaurs developed similar aerodynamic structures. Different ancestry. Same physical constraints. Same functional outcome. Because nature operates within boundaries. Carcinization is simply one of the clearest demonstrations of those boundaries in action. It shows that evolution is powerful, but not limitless. It explores possibilities, but only within what anatomy and physics allow. And sometimes, the most efficient answer happens to look like a crab. So why does this mostly happen in crustaceans? Because they are uniquely positioned to access this design space. Their external skeletons provide structural support. Their modular segments allow reshaping. Their evolutionary flexibility makes the crab form reachable. It is not a universal inevitability, it is conditional inevitability. Given the same environment and the same biological starting point, evolution often produces the same result. That is not a coincidence, but rather a constraint. Fortunately, humans will not evolve into crabs. Our anatomy does not permit that transformation without total collapse. But in marine ecosystems, among crustaceans, the crab shape will likely appear again. And again, as long as predators hunt along the seafloor, as long as currents apply torque, as long as stability increases survival, evolution will keep rediscovering this blueprint. Not because crabs are perfect, but because within certain limits they are practical. And that might be the most important takeaway. Evolution is not a story of endless creativity. It is a story of repeated efficiency. It tests variations, it eliminates failures. And when a structure consistently works, it reappears. However, crabs are not the final form of life. They are one of the most efficient answers to a specific problem. If you want to understand another case where evolution repeated itself in an even more dramatic way, then you need to watch the video on prehistoric gigantism next, where I explain why multiple species independently evolved into massive forms across different eras. Because sometimes evolution does not repeat shapes, sometimes it repeats extremes. And once you understand that pattern, you start seeing evolution very differently,